All right, this is Infosec Decoded 69 Hacker X, and we're starting with Alan, who's got more Meltdown.
Yes, Meltdown, which is notorious for being a vulnerability concerning the race conditions in Intel and ARM CPUs, apparently also sort of applies to AMD CPUs, which were previously thought to be unaffected by such a bug. Now, to be clear, this is not exactly Meltdown, but it's a couple of academic studies which exploit similar vulnerabilities in AMD CPUs. And as it turns out, two independent groups came up with very similar attacks at the same, more or less the same time, and published them recently.
I think that happened with the original one too.
Oh, was it two different groups that discovered that for Meltdown?
I thought so. And this speculative execution thing sounded like a boondoggle from the start.
Well, yeah, and it turns out that it affects just about all CPUs now. All the major instructor set architectures are affected, although not RISC-V, as far as I know. So,
Does it do speculative execution?
I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it does or doesn't.
Yeah,
I've been a huge advocate for RISC for a while now, and maybe now it'll get some traction. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. So did they have a fix yet for this new one?
No, I don't believe they do.
The fix for the previous one was awful. It slowed down the machines by like 25%.
Yeah. So AMD, it's used. Well, I guess it is used somewhat in servers. It's catching on in the world of servers, cloud computing, etc. So it perhaps does have security implications beyond just gaming machines.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's see. And then I've got, this is something I was looking forward to. We were talking about this before. So in Israel, they're now starting to deliver stuff with drones. And so a company is trying to develop some way to stop the drones from colliding. He says, we're going to have thousands of drones flying everywhere. And they're trying to develop air traffic control for drones. And they're talking about how they're going to make this across vendors, because some company like Google or Amazon will only care about their own drones, but you really need everybody to have the same collision avoidance system or something. So that's it'd be interesting to see what they come up with. I was thinking you'd have to have official lanes and cops and rules and speed limits and everything, but probably much more practical would be for every drone to somehow have some kind of software that reports its location and detects and avoids collisions. Anyway, it looks like Israel is designing it. Yep.
So autonomous drones?
Well, I think these are remote controlled, but I would think the collision avoidance better be autonomous.
Aircraft already, before you take off, you have to submit a flight plan to the FAA. And it seems like if you submit a flight plan with your drone and you have it set up so that at 10:55 a.m. it's going to go up to an altitude of 1,000 feet, head due east, and then ascend to ground level. That's really all you need for collision avoidance and then hook that up with GPS just to make sure that everything is okay. And
while you're going up, you could get hit by 12 other drones delivering coffee.
Right, but they know you're going up because you already submitted your flight plan.
Well, see, then you'd have to have some kind of central server that works.
That's what we already have. It's called the FAA.
Yeah, but the problem is, the whole point of this is they say they can deliver your coffee in 10 minutes. So how am I supposed to file a flight plan and get clearance in 10 minutes?
Unless it's autonomous.
What's that? Yeah, no, that's why I think we need to do it just the way the bees do. Everybody just flies any damn time they want, and they have collision avoidance. They avoid ramming into each other. That seems the only practical answer. I don't think you can possibly expect, especially a government database, to handle all that traffic and get it right. That'll hold back drones for 10 years, I think.
Well, I'm just saying that the infrastructure has already started to be developed for this kind of thing, and that it just needs to be improved upon. And just like roads are not an ideal solution for cars, it's what we have to work with. Likewise, for drones, we'll likely adopt something very similar to the FAA, flight plan submission.
Boy, I hope not, because that'll set us way behind. I prefer random, uncontrolled chaos. Like the red states where everybody has a gun and you have no laws. So we can have efficiency and freedom. That's my plan. Anyway. But it looks like Israel's going with my plan. But the America seems to be going with your plan. Last I heard, it's really hard to get any approval for like commercial use of drones because of that. They have to like write rules and laws and everything. Anyway, so Kaitlyn, oh yeah, this one, the reporter who found the flaw in the website.
Right. So the Missouri Independent has an article written by Jason Hancock talking about a hacker who stole the social security numbers of teachers. Like poor teachers just doing their job. This hacker comes along, steals all their numbers, and likewise the governor, I believe. Is it the governor? Yes, the governor vowed criminal prosecution of this hacker who stole these social security numbers. And not only that, the hacker actually came forward with their name. It was a reporter. I forget the name of the reporter. It was a Post-Dispatch reporter, I believe. And they are prosecuting this evil hacker. What do you think, Sam?
I think you're messing with me.
I think I'm messing with you too. Yeah. So the real story here is that the quote unquote hacker did some pretty basic things. The hacker pushed F12 on the keyboard to view the source code or inspect the source code, and just saw all the social security numbers sitting there, and reported it. It reported it responsibly too, saying, "Hey, there's an issue here. You need to take care of it," which is how they know the reporter's name. So, of course, the reporter is being labeled a hacker, and they're prosecuting the reporter, and it's
Well, the governor is pushing back and saying he didn't just press F12. He then had to decode them from something like base 64. So that proves that he's a hacker. And anyway, one very common thing I'm seeing on the Twitter thread is people saying that's not really hacking, that doesn't count. But I must say, the governor is probably correct, because I used to do this kind of thing. I'd report vulnerabilities, and then I did a Google search and found like some medical data just sitting there on an FTP server. And they complained and said, "You hacked us." And I went to my lawyer, and my lawyer said, "Well, I could make a CFAA violation out of that." He said, "Read the CFAA again. You have violated the CFAA. If you look at the source code of a website and you discover something that they do not want you to know, you have broken the CFAA. You have learned data you are not authorized to have. It does not say anything about penetrating a barrier or guessing a password or anything. However, in court, you can probably win, I think. You bring a lawyer and say, look, what I did was reasonable use of the website, but it's not completely false legally to say anything that exceeds our expected use of the website is unauthorized and therefore hacking." So the guy could defend this case in court, but I think, in a competent court decision, you will not be punished for this.
Right. It's the difference between what is illegal and then what is prosecutable and what is punishable. I mean, there's a difference between all those things.
Yes, and this is the point. I mean, this is why there's a big gray area. That's why I remember going to B-Sides a few years ago, and they had the head of the Department of Justice computer crime there, and he said, "Guys, we know that everything you do is technically illegal, but you can trust us. We only prosecute the bad guys." And I'm like, well, that's the way it is. I kind of wish it was different, but that is the way it is.
Yes.
Anyway, of course, none of us would know anything about getting in legal trouble, but anyway. So
no, we always follow the law to the letter.
Exactly, precisely, yeah. All right, and Irvin has got school cybersecurity. Boy, we could use some of that.
Right. Biden signed a bill into law that's supposed to help improve cybersecurity at K through 12s, and it starts as all government stuff do, with a survey, with an evaluation, see where they're at. Meanwhile, those K through 12s will get hit. But it's a start, I suppose.
Is there something simple they could do to stop ransomware? I really don't know what to tell people that say, here I am running a small business. What can I do? It's not like install this one thing and it'll be fine. It's not that simple at all, right?
No, but they could start with hiring more competent people.
Well, we all work in education. We know how likely that is.
Yeah.
I mean, much more likely would be just buy this product and install it. Like a web application firewall. I mean, that's the thing. All I've seen is just the usual stuff. Update your stuff, change the default passwords, and all that. And that's really not going to do much. Anyway, usually what they do is form a government agency.
That'll probably happen, or they'll just add it onto like
The CSON, I guess.
yeah, CISA.
Well, anyway, it certainly is good for someone to address it, and hopefully the committee will come up with some good recommendations, because school security tends to be terrible.
Mm-hmm.
And they also tend to be understaffed and out of date in both hardware and software and knowledge. So
Yep.
you know, I would hesitate about what recommendation to give them, but it would be sort of nice if they met some minimum standards, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why, one of the more common things is like complete beginners come to me and say, what should I do to improve my security? And I don't really know. I find a few links to send them to. I say it's like use a password manager and quit using the same password everywhere. After that, I'm kind of out of good ideas, really.
Mm.
Anyway, this happened because, Joe Rogan had a real Met doctor got to come on his show, and he talked about, I don't bother with the vaccine and I'm not going to now, and I'm just taking ivermectin. And the doctor tried to say that's not the right thing to do and didn't get anywhere. And I feel that way when people come to me with their cybersecurity home problems. Like, I don't know, I give you advice, but it probably isn't really going to do any good. I don't know how to communicate with muggles. Anyway, so Cloudflare, according to Alan, Cloudflare is not liable for something.
Yes. In a lawsuit brought by Mon Cherie Bridals and Maggie Sotera Designs, two bridal dress manufacturers, they alleged that Cloudflare was responsible as a CDN, a content delivery network provider, was responsible for helping over 500 different websites sell dresses that were essentially knockoffs of Mon Cherie Bridals and Maggie Sotera Designs.
Wow, so how are they supposed to know that?
Well, they really did their homework, apparently, these two companies, bridal companies.
Yeah.
And they identified over 500 different John Does or defendants that are responsible for these different websites that infringe on these designs. Apparently, you can copyright a wedding dress design.
Well, I guess you can copyright anything, but what I mean is, how is Cloudflare supposed to know if some website goes up selling dresses that those are pirated dress designs?
Well, because these two companies then notified Cloudflare that they had these websites that were selling counterfeits that were.
Oh, well, that's like a DMCA takedown then, right?
Exactly. Right.
Well, that makes
and
yeah.
In this case, which is now almost completely dead, the judge recently ruled that, in fact, Cloudflare has no responsibility to take down these counterfeit sites, and they are not liable.
Now, the actual host would have to take them down, right?
I'm sorry?
The actual host would have to take them down with the DMCA notice, right?
Right. And so what this does is it essentially defines a CDN as part of basic internet infrastructure.
Yeah.
So you can't hold a ISP responsible. For example, you can't hold an ISP responsible for an infringing website. And now, according to this case, the precedent that's being set in this case, a CDN such as Cloudflare or Akamai or Fastly, even though they are, as a CDN, effectively hosting or sort of making available these websites, they nevertheless are not legally responsible for whatever infringing content may exist on these websites that they are in part helping to make available on the internet, because they're considered legally more part of the infrastructure rather than the host.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, I've always felt that way about Cloudflare, but certainly I think, like most of our news articles, this is where technology creates a weird creature and the legal status of that creature is not clear.
Right. And one might say, well, bridal dresses, who cares? It's such a benign topic, and bridal dresses are overpriced anyway. Maybe some
Oh,
people
well.
say even that it's a good thing that there are knockoffs,
Well.
cheaper knockoffs available
Well,
for.
now you're being communist. I mean,
Yeah, right.
it's like
But
anything else, right? You make it, you patent it, and then or copyright it, and then you expect to have exclusive rights to make it for a while.
right. But this is where this gets much trickier, at least in the eyes of some, is then, well, what role does Cloudflare have in effectively defending websites that maybe have more odious ideological
Yeah.
things, like, neo-Nazi websites,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. So what responsibility does Cloudflare have in that situation?
Well, I'm right from the beginning. This is how I became friends with the CEO of Cloudflare. I felt like they had no responsibility at all. It's just an automated service. And that he held that position for years. But then a few years back, he actually took down some site that was so awful. He said he does take down child porn sites, and he took down like one of the famous hacker crew sites that was posting like stolen police data or something. So they do take things down sometimes.
Very occasionally, yes. My understanding is that after they took down a white supremacist website shortly after the Charlottesville
Yeah, I think that was it. Yeah.
killing by white supremacists, Matthew Prince said that they would never do that again.
Well, he said he didn't want to do it. He said, there really ought to be some government agency telling me what to take down. It shouldn't just be up to me to arbitrarily decide what I don't like.
Right.
But this is what Facebook has been saying for years. They're saying, you want us to take down political disinformation, medical disinformation, but you don't make it clear. There ought to be a rule, and then you ought to enforce the rule. But, our government is incapable of doing anything like that. Yeah, so DMCA has at least a clear rule. You get a takedown notice, and then you have to take it down, or else there's another legal step that can happen.
Right.
So at least that law is written in a way that seems relatively effective.
Yes, although apparently this doesn't apply to bridal dresses. So
no, it doesn't apply to Cloudflare, right? It would apply to bridal dresses, right? If they could find the original host, they would be able
to if
take it down, right?
To the original host. Yeah. Although it's interesting that say the recording industry, music industry, hasn't gone off after Cloudflare on similar grounds, because I'm sure they're protecting music pirating websites too.
Well, I kind of doubt it, because almost all that goes by BitTorrent, and Cloudflare doesn't.
Well, that is true. Although there's certainly websites that do provide streaming services.
Yeah, but that wouldn't work. The only thing Cloudflare proxies is HTTP.
Oh.
And so you'd have to have download links ready, download directly from your server. And I think anybody that does that would have been nuked long ago. That's why, the one that does that, though, is Mega. Mega hosts all these pirated content, and Mega went to great effort to make sure it's encrypted with a key they don't have. So they say, I don't know what that stuff is. I'm sure it's not pirated movies and music. Why? Who would do that? And that apparently is enough to get them out in the legal clear. Nobody's taken down Mega. Anyway, all right. And so I thought this was amazing. In Texas, there's a law passed now that you cannot teach any controversial topics in school without presenting the other side. And since Holocaust denial is common, you cannot teach anything about the World War II Holocaust without having a presentation of the other side, whatever that would be. I guess you're going to hand out the Protocols of the Elders of Zion to your students and teach them that. And so the teachers are understandably pushing back and saying, what is the other side about the Holocaust? What horrible stuff do you expect me to teach? And he's saying, I'm trying to comply with the law, which says we must present the other side of everything. So this, I think, is our society reaching the logical conclusion of the current age of disinformation. So I should teach the alternative to vaccination, the alternative to the last election, the alternative to, we're going to have two histories here. So,
right. So what's really important about this article is it's not a hypothetical that oh, well, they want to teach us both sides. Well, what do they want us to teach us both sides of the Holocaust? No, this one of the school superintendents, I'm not sure who, but it was one of the school officials told the teachers, if you're going to teach the Holocaust, you got to teach the other side. And the other teachers in the room audibly gasped and said, what's the other side of the Holocaust? You know?
Yeah,
So
I remember. I saw or heard the thing yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I know, and this is like for years they've been saying if you teach evolution, you have to also teach creation because it's equally valid. This is the huge thing that's going on all over our culture, that we should have two sides to everything and both sides are valid, and there is no such thing as truth or evidence or science anymore.
Right.
It must be awful to be a teacher in such a place.
Right. So there's two things at play here. First is this is an example of why centrism is a terrible position to begin with. But also this goes into the political machinations of a lot of fringe groups that try to use wedge issues, essentially. Like they know that their ideas are so extreme that it's not going to be accepted. But what they do instead is create a wedge. And as you said, Sam, this goes back to like creationism, where they don't say, oh, we should be teaching kids creationism. They say, well, there's a debate. And then they make it sound like there's some sort of 50-50, it could be either way type thing to people to give their side credence, when in reality, their side has maybe like 0.01% of scientists, which is no scientific support whatsoever, versus a credible scientific theory. So
and it started with cigarettes, and the cigarette company could not say that cigarettes were good for you, but they said our product is doubt. We are going to pay scientists to make bogus studies saying cigarettes don't cause cancer, and then we'll say there is a question about this. Scientists haven't agreed, so they moved on to global warming, and now they're moving on. This has been Trump's argument about the last election, and I saw this many times. They say we have to audit the election because there is controversy. They say, but there's controversy because you lied about it. There's no evidence on your side. He says, well, nevertheless, now there's controversy, so we must not say it's a settled fact. So it continues to be in dispute until I stop lying about it. And this means that I can just erase the truth at any time and move forward. And that's where we are. And this is common in totalitarian regimes. The boss states the truth, and you read out your history books to do whatever the boss says, and that is the truth now.
Right. One of my biggest fears moving forward, a lot of people have written about dystopian societies, and most of it talks about sort of mundane stuff that'll never happen, like AI going out of control. Mm-hmm. But I think we've talked about this before, Sam, where social sciences become a real science. Yeah. Right. And we know how to best manipulate people. And absolutely, there are a lot of research into how to best convince people of something, on your side. And that gets put into play every single day. It is not some people sitting around a table, think tanking ideas and pushing forward. There's a lot of research, a lot of methodology that goes into these, goes into creating our mindsets that create this environment where we're like, well, there are two sides to every truth. Like, not really. The facts kind of don't have two sides.
Yeah, and this goes all the way back to Lord Rutherford. I mean, he said that people who haven't studied mathematics do not even know what the truth is. They don't understand that you could actually know something with certainty. All they have is like vague opinions. So they don't understand the difference between truth and falsehood.
Right. And what's very worrisome is that according to a lot of, and this is anecdotal data, but math scores around the United States right now are doing particularly horrible, math and reading, which is troubling because, as you said, Sam, part of understanding what truth is having a good understanding of mathematics, to understand that, no, there is not sometimes two answers to a problem. Sometimes 1 + 1 = 2. And, there is no 1 + 1 = 3 or some other alternative facts out there to go against this idea. So
and when I watched Joe Rogan defend his idea of not taking the vaccine, I was just horrified because the fundamental idea is, I would say, if you have a medical problem, you should listen to medical scientists who have actually done research. He said, oh no, I think getting it is better than taking the vaccine. He says, no, the research doesn't support that, but that just bounces off him. He does not agree that if you want to solve a problem, you should perform a scientific experiment and find the truth. He just feels like whatever his opinion is just as valid as the opinion of scientists who did the research. And
right. And truth be told, science is a philosophy.
Yeah.
And and we can have a debate about how what is science and how far should we take it in our society, and is this the best basis for determining truth in all situations? It is not the best way to determine truth in all situations, but having these discussions is good. But the problem is that we're not living in society where we're having these discussions. We're living in society where, like I said, there are people pay lots of money to determine the best way to get people upset or get people to believe a certain thing, and push that out without any further discussion or introspection about whether or not this is a good thing, or philosophical, discussions about, how best to go about a certain issue.
And this is, I think, what the tobacco companies figured out and the polluting companies figured out. And Steve Bannon explained it specifically. What you do is you just fill the zone with shit. You just spew endless lies that contradict each other until people get bored and give up. And then you can just do whatever you want. So it is a denial of service attack against the truth and science and logic and the law. And it's extremely effective. And as you see, the whole Trump and his gang pretty much can just ignore the law completely by just flooding the world. This is like his lawsuit. He has tons and tons of lawsuits he files just to get people to go away.
Right. And this is why it's really important as well to escape from or go away from any sort of propaganda channels that we have in the United States. We do have propaganda channels. Now, the thing about America that's kind of interesting is that we have a hybrid corporate public government system because we really cannot get money out of politics. So the corporations run our propaganda networks, which makes things a little less clear, I think, to the average American, because they're not getting their propaganda straight from the government. They're getting it from large corporations, which have an agenda to maximize their own profits.
Right, like Facebook.
Facebook, exactly.
What they want is to make you angry so that you'll watch more.
Right. So yeah, definitely understanding why this content exists, what they're trying to do with it is important, but we're not teaching our children the media literacy skills necessary to determine the motivations of the authors.
Yes, and I think that's the answer. Of course, I think the answer to most everything is education, but anyway, so you've got...
And just so happens that you're a teacher and you would get money for that. Oh, how convenient, Sam.
That's right. Well, it's all quite logical. I often have this feeling when people reveal that some medical, like Dr. Fauci, or I don't know if he has, but they say this guy's invested in a drug company. I say, well, yes, he's in the field. That actually doesn't mean, that's not really a conflict of interest. You are involved in the field. Anyway, so all right, so Apple took down the Quran.
Yeah. Oh, and the Bible.
Oh my goodness! Wait till the right wingers hear about that.
Oh no.
Yeah. So, okay. So what's going on? So the Insider has a article written by Isabel Asher Hamilton, talking about how Apple took down apps regarding the Quran and the Bible in China on the request of the Chinese government because.
Oh man, that is exactly what they say. Those communists want to crush our religion. Oh man.
Yeah. So I don't know what's going to go. What's happening? What's going to happen with the right-wing Christians in our nation? On the one hand, there's deep Islamophobia in the deep Protestant devout circles. On the other hand, they're here specifically because they were escaping religious prosecution in England, and we got all the crazy people. I've noticed this a lot. So in countries like the United States and Australia, other countries sent us their crazy people they could not deal with. And all of a sudden today, we have to deal with all this craziness in our country. And we're like, where did all this come from? Well, and we'll get, my next article will go into some of this craziness in a bit. But we have the anti-vaxxing movement and all these people talking about the rapture. No, when you build a country based on exiled crazy people, this is kind of what you get.
Actually, California, for that matter. But so why is China taking it down? Do they like
Uyghurs? They don't like the Muslims.
But what about the Bible?
I don't know. They don't.
Do they crush all religions? I mean, back in the time of Mao, I think they did explicitly crush all religions, but I thought they knocked it off.
Yeah, no, I don't think they're going after every religion. I think just the ones that the government finds politically inconvenient.
Well, you know, they haven't got the First Amendment over there,
Nope.
so the government can do this, but they get a lot of criticism from America for doing it, and rightly so. All right. Well, anyway, all right. And Irvin has got somebody hacked a flight school. Oh,
Yes. So this woman, who they're suspecting is the one who did it, was a manager, had access to manager level stuff, and apparently logged in after the fact, after she was fired, and changed the status of plane to where in maintenance and not quite air ready. So they got her. She's, I believe, she's arrested.
That sounds a lot like terrorism or something to me. That's a pretty serious crime, I would think.
Yeah, I would think to change a plane status from needs maintenance to ready to fly, and somebody died because of that.
Yeah, that's reckless endangerment at least.
It is reckless endangerment. So before you fly any plane, even if it's airworthy, you have to go out and inspect it every time. That's why when you get off a plane at an airport, you don't just get back on and then go on your next flight. What the ground crews are doing within that like hour or 2 hours that the plane is on the ground is they're doing a full inspection of everything. They're refueling it, they're testing the flaps, they're testing, they're going over the entire hull, looking for anything that might be an issue. It's actually pretty incredible that you can get a big aircraft like the 747 on the ground, inspected and ready to fly again in like an hour or two, but they managed to do it.
Yeah.
Because you can't have anything go wrong in the middle of a flight. This isn't like driving a car where if your car breaks down, you can pull off on the side of the road. If something goes wrong with your aircraft, and you're just not in a good position to land, you have some problems.
Well, but of course they do practice that handling when like an engine goes out or something. But anyway, it's something you avoid as much as possible.
You do. So an aircraft can have an engine go out. That's not a big deal. Believe it or not. You can't have all the engines going out because that becomes a big deal. But a plane can fly on one engine. I've seen planes fly on one wing, but those are like F-22s.
Yep.
A lot can happen to a plane, and they can still fly. But you definitely, you can't have it go catastrophically wrong. And if you're on a single engine aircraft, especially, so like this is a flight school, those are single engine aircraft. The engines cannot fail in flight. Otherwise, you'll have to just glide to the ground and just hope that you're close enough to an airport or a good landing field that you're safe. Otherwise, yeah.
Yep. Well, and I think they don't specify the security flaw here, but it sounds like the security flaw is they just didn't cancel her account when they fired her, so she could just log in later. That's very common.
Right. No. I think they've used the same password.
Right. That's like that's like one of the official top 10 things to do in security is disable the account of people you fire, because obviously they're likely to log back in and make trouble.
Well, no, it says that she got the password. The article says she got the password of like an administrator or something, and they're not sure how they got the password.
Yeah.
And of course, like I said, this happened in Melbourne, Australia. Like I said, this kind of stuff only happens in the countries where, they send all the crazy people that were too crazy for their homeland.
The password was probably just on a Post-it note by the monitor. Anyway.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah,
but you would think, I mean, this isn't just a regular hacking case. This is reckless endangerment, and that's not
But
okay.
when I looked at the crime she's accused of, they look like just computer misuse or something. So it looks like she didn't actually get charged for anything too serious.
Anyway, not yet.
Yeah. Anyway, so now we get to Hacker X.
Hacker X, or Robert Willis, who is a cybersecurity professional who was interviewed in a book titled Manipulated Inside the Cyber War to Hijack Elections and Distort the Truth. But he has now come forward using his real name and is profiled in an Ars Technica article written by Ax Sharma. And it's a really interesting profile of somebody who has tremendous technical skills and used those technical skills to work for a fake news website, or actually a large collection of fake news websites. And if you look at the success of a lot of these fake news websites, they had to have some kind of person or persons with deep technical knowledge in order to get the traction, to get the attention that they did. And in this case, this Robert Willis fellow, aside from just having skills in cybersecurity, also had a lot of background in system administration, IT generally, search engine optimization, a number of different skills that could be used to basically get more eyeballs on koala media stories that appeared on their websites, hundreds of websites that they operated, and also on Facebook. And so this really well-written and thorough profile goes into some detail in how Koala Media, first of all, was able to execute on this, and how little scrutiny their posts got over time from Facebook, and how much success they had. Starting out in 2015, when Willis first joined, when they were just doing the really low, easy stuff like lemons cure cancer, that kind of thing. Then to 2016, when they started getting more overtly political and supportive of Trump and others in the conservative, ultra-conservative, right-wing, alt-right firmament.
Yep. So this is a lot like Cambridge Analytica.
Well, I wouldn't go quite so far as Cambridge Analytica, because there you have a proper, quote unquote, proper company that is more respectable and is far better resourced. This is more on the really grifty end of right-wing media, where they're just cooking up various nonsensical stories and trying to make a buck off of that, but also with an agenda, a political agenda.
Yeah. Well, I think they just an advertising firm get paid by a Republican candidate to push their candidate or some kind of interest group.
Well, what's interesting about this story ultimately is that Willis's own father got sucked into these very websites operated by Koala Media, and the COVID denialism, et cetera, et cetera. And so now his very own father believes this stuff on Koala Media websites, even though Willis has told him that he worked for this company and that it's all made up. His own father refuses to believe him and instead chooses to believe this disinformation on the Koala.
I think we've all got this, members of our family who are getting sucked into this stuff because they just don't know how to apply, critical reading to what they read. I mean, I know a guy who's like emigrated here from Palestine. He runs a deli, and every time I visit him, he's always repeating to me anti-vax nonsense that came from Fox News. I think if you just, they call them the low information voters. If you just don't pay a lot of attention to the news and don't read much, then all you see is like headlines from Fox, the #1 news channel, and you believe that's the truth. It's pretty scary. You have to be sort of critical and careful in your thinking to see through this haze of lies that permeates our society.
Yeah, it's one of the big mysteries that people aren't more capable of scrutinizing these. And
well, I don't think it's a mystery. People are just busy, and if you don't really work hard to learn things, you just sort of believe the first thing you see going by, that because you're focusing on other things, right?
Yes, but it's also so transparently nonsensical. Like essentially lemons cure cancer, that kind of thing. I mean, it's pretty obvious that that's not true. And
well, that's why I think I benefited by listening to Joe Rogan and this guy at the Jelly. The #1 division is education. People that have actually been to college, it's transparently clear to us how fake this is. And a lot of people that have not been to college do not have that feeling. And I think it's because college makes you actually read a lot and argue a lot. I think a lot of people don't have that ability or that practice. The average American never reads anything.
Yes, although I think it's also important to say that education attainment doesn't necessarily mean that somebody is more discerning of the facts, for example, or is incapable of
Not
critical
necessarily,
thought.
but I think it has a very high statistical likelihood of creating that. I've seen the charts. Um, it's the big division in America is primarily education, I think.
Yes, well, nevertheless, Trump did attract plenty of college-educated voters.
Oh, yes. Yes. Educated people can be gullible too, but they tend to have more ability to notice when they're being lied to. Anyway, so I know, for example, certain things you have to appeal them differently. And I notice this is why religious cults and succeed. Things that flatter you educated people are predisposed to think, well, I'm smarter than everybody else. I'm the special one. I know the truth. So you have to appeal to that. Anyway, all right. So that's Hacker X. Oh, and then I thought this is amazing. They want to indict an engineer for the 737 MAX crashes. The 737, 2 of them crashed, killed hundreds of people because they had changed the way the pilots' flight controls worked without telling the pilots and without training them on the changes. So they would try to fly the plane as usual, and it would start steering down to the ground. And when they did the usual things to prevent that, it wouldn't work because they had added computer controls and not trained the pilots. And now they have decided to blame this on a test pilot that covered this up and did not report it and did not inform the FAA that people needed more training to fly these planes. So they have found a fall guy for this one. And we'll see how it goes. It's a huge disaster for Boeing, boy. And anyway, there's the one guy named Faulkner is being blamed for having covered this up and deceived the agencies, so they did not, in fact, train the pilots correctly. But we'll see what comes of that.
I think one mistake Faulkner made was he essentially bragged of deceiving the FAA in some emails, internal emails.
Oh, man.
And there it is.
Yeah.
Well, that doesn't help. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so if he hadn't said that in the email, he might have been in the clear on this one.
Yeah. You know, I feel bad for these guys' defense attorneys. Like, you said what? And now you expect me to save you somehow. I mean,
Right. Right. But as you said, the guy is essentially being set up. He's the fall guy. And he, after all, was not the one who made these decisions. He wasn't the one who decided to implement MCAS, and he's not the one who decided to conceal this fact from the airlines and from other pilots.
well, yeah, but it sounds like he certainly did something wrong.
Well, he certainly contributed to it, though. Yes, but
Yeah.
this is very much on the shoulders of Boeing as an organization, and like any very complex system failure, really the origins of this go back all the way to 1998 when Boeing acquired McDonnell Douglas.
Yeah. Well, all right. And then Kaitlyn has got broadband data caps.
Yep, we've kind of been over this before on the podcast, but it bears repeating. So there's an article on TechDirt written by, Carl Bowne, talking about how in this one area, Cox Communications pretty much has a monopoly on the high-speed internet in the area until T-Mobile and a few other wireless companies came in and said, hey, we'll offer unlimited 5G home access for you if you want. And suddenly when there was competition, their data rate caps suddenly disappeared. And this has been known for a while. Data rate caps are a complete marketing scam. It was just like text messaging with the cell phone companies a few decades ago, where they would charge like several cents per text message, even though they were essentially free and part of the backbone telecommunications service already. And, you know, this is what happens when you have monopolies.
Yep.
When you have private companies running important public infrastructure, they find ways to nickel and dime and sort of get as much money out of their customers, which is their job, by the way. I mean, this is what a company is supposed to do. They're supposed to maximize the profits. Now, they do things that would not fly in a competitive market, which is where regulations needs to step in and say, hey, you have a monopoly here, you're using monopolistic practices to, artificially increase your profit margin. But unfortunately, there's really not a whole lot of regulation that goes on. So these companies just get away scot-free doing these anti-consumer practices, so that no one can really do anything about because they need internet, right? So
yeah, that's why we need antitrust regulation.
we need antitrust, or just even better, have more options for ISPs in the area. One of the things, even as a leftist, communist, socialist, whatever you want to call me, person, I have to say one of the most effective methods of dealing with social issues is to work with the existing systems you have. And so a good example of this is cap and trade, which was why we don't really have acid rain anymore. So what happened was coal plants and other power plants were releasing a bunch of volatile chemicals into the atmosphere, causing
sulfur dioxide, I think. Yeah.
Yep. Sulfur dioxide into the atmosphere, which was causing the rain to become harmfully acidic. And to counter this, the government came up with this idea of cap and trade, where instead of just saying, hey, you need to cut out the emissions, which is what the socialist leftist people want to do, and the strict capitalists, conservatives would be like, or libertarians, I should say, would be like, no, the government shouldn't do anything. The solution was this idea of cap and trade, which is you cap the amount of pollutants that's allowed to be given off. And then the companies can then buy these sort of permits to pollute, essentially. And if they pollute less, they can sell these permits for profit. So they now have a profit motive for reducing their transmissions. And it has worked so well, this stupid cap and trade, even though it was opposed basically by all sides, it has worked so well that acid rain really isn't a thing we worry about anymore. So,
I was thinking about the Pope selling indulgences in medieval Germany, and he missed that second part, where if you're virtuous, you could sell your virtue for money to some other sinner. That would be awesome. Yes. You could turn Christianity into multi-level marketing. It could have been awesome, but they missed that part.
They did. The Catholic Church is not very good with multi-level marketing and pyramid schemes, apparently.
Well, the indulgence part was just basically like initial coin offering. You just print money. I'll sell you this piece of paper for a pile of money, and now God will forgive you for your sin. That was a pretty good scam, but it did lead to the Protestant Revolution, though.
Anyway, yeah, working within the system, adding competition, maybe having a government-run ISP in the area as well to make sure that the private ISPs have something to compete with. That would be maybe something different to offer. I don't know, but you really need to have that competition there to make things fair.
Yeah. All right. And the last one is Irvin, who is hating on poor Windows 11.
Yeah, this was a fun opinion read. This person does not like Windows 11 at all, with all the basically lining up the slowdown of the CPUs. You have to have certain type of hardware, and that doesn't always work, and patches up and down everywhere. Yeah, this person is basically saying 11 is the next Vista, the next Me, the next Windows 8.
Yep.
I wouldn't go that far. I think the article's main point is that it was pointless, and I agree. Let's look at a real bad version of Windows 8. We all understood why it existed, right? That tablets were becoming a big thing, and Microsoft wanted to capitalize on it.
And phones at that time.
And phones as well. And so they wanted to create a universal interface for all devices. And, on paper, that sounds good. In practice, it turns out to be not so good. And of course, but nothing like that has ever been done before. So you understand why it was built. Even though it was bad, you understand why. Windows 11, I don't really get the point.
I heard an article where Mary Jo Foley they asked the designer, what do we get with Windows 11? And he said, rounded corners on the windows.
Yeah, I mean, it does look slightly better. I'm not a big fan of the centered icons on the taskbar, but you can turn that off. And I think the icons and the rounded corners do look a little better, whatever, that's fine. It could have been just the October update for Windows 10. You know,
Years ago, Microsoft said there would never be a Windows 11. They would just put updates on Windows 10.
yeah, and there just doesn't seem to be a point to this. And the thing is it feels like a step back. I'm not going to say it is, like I said, it's not broken like Windows 8 was broken. Like Windows 8 was kind of fundamentally broken in its user interface. Vista was fundamentally broken because it was not really backwards compatible and just too slow on stuff. Windows 11 isn't really broken, but it feels like a step backwards. In the sense that one, it's pointless, but also two, when Windows 10 first came out, there was this like competing settings, new settings, Windows 10 settings, and the control panel at the same time, and they were doing this big transition, and it felt kind of in the middle of everything. And then over time, with different patches, they finally moved everything over to the new Windows 10. And now with Windows 11, they're sort of in the same situation again, where they have like right-click context menus, where everything is new, but you still have the old context menus that you can go into again. So you have two context menus. You have another settings app now. So sometimes you go into the settings, you get the Windows 11 settings, and then you need to go back to the Windows 10 settings app. And then if you really need something old school, you go into the old control panel. I mean, it feels like a step back, and it's going to take a few updates to get it back up to where Windows 10 was. So it's just a pointless update.
Yeah, it reminds me of Windows 8 when people would pay like $70 to get a technician to upgrade their Windows 8 to Windows 7. Anyway.
Yeah, like I said, it's not, Windows 8 was fundamentally broken.
Yeah.
I don't think Windows 11 is fundamentally broken. It's just...
The pre-betas I used were in fact totally broken, where they would trash everything. Hopefully that's better. And I saw it's now they have the 90-day trial version on the Microsoft preview site, so I can make a machine for my Windows internals class. So I'll be having a Windows 11 version of that soon, and we'll all start using it.
Yep.
But, all right. Well, that's it for this one, and I think it's Friday, so we will be back Tuesday.
Oh, you know what? Windows is actually still missing a very important feature that they did not include in 11. Wobbly Windows.
Wobbly Windows?
Wobbly Windows. That's still not in Windows.
Aware of that.
On Linux systems, if you enable certain window managers, you can have the windows wobble around when you move them.
They're like
Windows,
gummy and rubbery.
Yeah, exactly. Wobbly Windows. Windows still does not have that feature, and it's very disappointing.
Well,
Catch up, Microsoft.
I'm sure somebody will have like an optional skin you can put on or something.
That you would think they would have that already. No, Microsoft needs to step up their game. That would have made Windows 11 worth the upgrade for wobbly Windows.
Well, see, you should join Microsoft and you can help them with these problems.
Yes.
All right. Farewell, folks. Wait, not that one.
The other one, Sam.
The other one. You got me.